G'day, Paul Jones here, coming to you from Arakoon today. Do you know what you've done? Do you know what you've done? Have you ever been on the receiving end of that question? It's not a great one because it tends to mean that you have done something with serious consequences and you have no idea what those consequences are. You're at Auntie May's house and you decide to do something nice for her because you know Uncle Barry just passed away, so you grab a vase off the shelf and you head out into the garden. You pick some flowers here and there and you put together a nice bouquet. Empty that vase of all its old dust and then you pop those flowers in. You half fill it with water and you're off to present it to Auntie May. But when you pass it to her, she's horrified. Something's not right here. You look around and in the room everyone's looking at you as if you've just tipped out Uncle Barry's ashes somewhere in the backyard. Do you realize what you've done? I'd hate to be that guy. By the way, I don't have an Auntie May and I don't have an Uncle Barry, just saying. But this is the question we're considering today. This is a question that Jesus asks. Only it's not, do you realize what you've done? It's Jesus asking us as his disciples, do you realize? Do you fully understand what I've done? When Jesus was going to the cross, he was well aware that the time he had with his disciples was running short. He had limited time to communicate his hopes and his expectations of them. So on a Thursday evening, he gathers his disciples together. It's a night that we remember today as Maundy Thursday. Maundy coming from the word mandate. So it refers to the commandment, the mandate that Jesus gave his disciples at that meal. And we'll come to that in just a minute. But in John 13, we read that Jesus knew his time had come. He would be on a cross by sundown the next day. And with that in the front of his mind, he does something shocking, something with serious consequences for us who've chosen to follow him. He gets up from the Passover meal as the esteemed rabbi in the room, and he takes off his garments and replaces them with a towel around his waist. He then stoops down to the ground and washes the feet of his disciples. Let me read a bit from verse 5. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" Now, to be really clear about this, rabbis don't wash feet, ever. This is a job for slaves or for women and children in a patriarchal society, which is why Peter responds the way he does. In typical fashion for Peter, he can hardly get his words out because he can't make sense of what Jesus is doing. But Jesus assures him that it will make sense in due course. In verse 7, Jesus says, "What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand." Now by afterward, Jesus might mean after this meal, he might mean after I die, he might mean after I'm resurrected and you're all empowered with my spirit. But there will come a time, says Jesus, when you'll get this. You'll understand. It will no longer seem completely inappropriate and out of place. But Peter's not having it. Peter says to him in verse 8, "You'll never wash my feet." Just straight out, "You'll never wash my feet." And Jesus answers him, "If I do not wash you, you have no share with me, no part, no inheritance in this." And suddenly Peter obliges and even says, "In that case, maybe wash my hands and my head too." But the point is not to make Peter physically clean, is it? Jesus hasn't decided halfway through the meal that these disciples of his smell a bit off and probably need a quick wash before they move on to dessert. No, Jesus' actions have a deeper significance, a deeper meaning. In light of what's about to take place over the weekend, the most significant weekend in human history, Jesus' actions are loaded with symbolism. On one hand, the Passover, the Last Supper. And on the other hand, many scholars also think that this foot washing is a nod towards baptism, where a person publicly identifies with the death and resurrection of Jesus and is washed clean of the penalty for their sin. So yes, these two sacraments come together here in this one event. And it's theologically rich. And it's great if we can get our heads around that. But Jesus explicitly says that it's not enough for us to get our heads around it. Listen to this in verse 12. When he'd washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, "Do you understand what I've done? To you or for you? Do you realize what I've done? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for that's what I am." But verse 14, "If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I've given you an example, that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them." You're blessed if you do them. Those words pack a punch, don't they? Jesus tells his followers, if you understand what I'm saying, well, that's fantastic. You're halfway there. But do you realize what I've done? My actions have huge implications for you. Do you realize what I've done? I've set the bar. I've established a pattern. I've made a path for you to walk in. I've drawn up a model which your lives are also to be built upon. See, the actions are followed by a clear directive in verse 14. You call me teacher? All right then, do the things I'm teaching you. And verse 15 needs no commentary from me. I've given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. Jesus has flipped the order of things. He's flipped the power structures of the world we live in. He's flipped the expectations that a student can have of a teacher. He's flipped the dignity of the one who serves. Do you realize what I've done? As you ponder this question for your own discipleship, consider the ways that you can realize what Jesus has done. That is, how can you make real the washing of another's feet in your life today? Let me pray for you. Jesus, your actions are profound and your words are profound, and you call us, each by our own name, to follow you to the foot washing basin. You've not asked us, you've not made a suggestion, you've commanded us as people who follow you to do this. So would you show us what this might look like for us in our life contexts today? Amen.